Hi, this is video number 182. Wanted to come up here and do a video before I'm watching the Masters. They're on, I think that the leaders are on like hole number 12 or 13, so I want to do a video here and go back down and see how that goes. Always like watching the Masters. And they're really stacked up here. There's a guy in the lead and there's like several guys behind him pretty close, so the Masters can be pretty exciting, for golf. If you call golf exciting, the Masters can be pretty exciting toward the end. So go down and do that. Have some ice cream maybe later on. But I want to come up here and do a video. Beautiful weather here today, nice and probably around 70. Trees are budding. It's going to be a good week. The weather's supposed to be really good. Let's see. The last video I did, I talked about maybe reading some things that I've written over the last few years since I've been well. And I mentioned one in the last video. It's entitled Getting Through. And for the life of me, I can't figure out what I wrote this for. I must have written it for one of the blogs or something. I've written for a number of blogs, but I can't figure out which one I actually wrote this for. So what I will do is read it and maybe comment on it at the end or something, or maybe just read it and that'll be it. And it's about benzo withdrawal, of course. So I'll start out here and just go and see how this works for you. Okay, getting through. Okay, my story is very long and circuitous. The nutshell version follows because it is not so much the journey itself that has been important, but rather the fact that I somehow stumbled along the path set before me and came to where I am now, a very fine, satisfying place. My early childhood was very difficult and resulted in me taking my first alcoholic drink at the age of 11 or 12. When I was 44, I began experiencing the first panic attacks of my life. Not knowing what was happening to me or that it was caused primarily by my binge drinking, I went to the doctor and was given a prescription for Xanax and some free samples of an antidepressant, which happened to be Paxil. The antidepressant immediately threw me into an 18-month battle for my life, one which nearly ended in suicide. The Xanax began a 13-year addiction or dependence to benzodiazepines. The drinking had progressed over the years and finally ended at the age of 56. At that time, I was not only an alcoholic, but also hopelessly, or so I thought, addicted to benzodiazepines. The day after I quit drinking, I immediately began experiencing post-acute withdrawal from the alcohol and tolerance withdrawal from the Klonopin I had been taking every day for 12 years. The next 2 years were filled with a misery that was indescribably brutal, relentless black, I want to die, depression, constant irrational terror, unending anxiety, thoughts and feelings of unreality, and total disconnectedness to anything or anybody, even myself. A plethora of physical symptoms: pain, burning, vibrations, extreme dizziness, fatigue, severe restlessness, heart palpitations, and on and on. The depth of mental, emotional, and physical anguish of benzodiazepine withdrawal cannot be understood by anyone who has not experienced it or is currently in its grasp. Sadly, this is not an unusual story up to this point. I have read thousands of similar stories over the years. Each one is unique. Each is a variation on the same theme. What is atypical of my story is that I somehow escaped the clutches of addiction and the suffering from withdrawal, even when those who should have known better and to whom I had entrusted my care were seemingly trying to pull me back into the abyss. Okay. I can now look back on that entire experience with a very clear mind and see how I staggered through. I certainly had no plan at the time and pretty much ad-libbed. I learned some very important things that I hope can be of use to others who now find themselves on that same path. Perhaps I can impart a little of the wisdom that I gleaned from my own journey. I could write many things, and I have done so in many different places, but I will stick to 3 truths. At least these were truths for me in my journey. Okay. The first one: The first one, one does not have to feel good about how they are walking along the path. You don't have to feel strong, happy, energetic, resilient, positive, or even be convinced that you are accomplishing anything. You don't have to feel anything. I often felt absolutely nothing. Feelings can be deceiving when you are suffering. The only measure of success is that you continue to walk along the path, one foot in front of the other, as Dr. Jennifer has said over and over. You don't have to feel like you are fighting the good fight, or even that you are fighting at all. Feeling good is not a measure of success during the battle. That is reserved for when the war is over. It is one of the many amazing rewards. Success is simply measured by staying in the fray and getting up when you are thrown down, like Rocky Balboa. Second truth, at some point along the path, the earlier the better, it is necessary to come to a place of acceptance. This was very difficult for me. In the first 2 or 3 months after I quit drinking, I prayed the prayer that many of us pray when we are in trouble. Please take this suffering from me. The result for me was continued and even greater suffering. I quickly learned that I needed to modify that prayer for my own good. It was more a realization that I needed to change my attitude and my perspective toward my circumstances. It was obviously going to be a long haul. There was not going to be an easy out. I had to accept that truth. Very difficult, but necessary. It would take as long as it would take. It didn't matter how I got to this place of suffering, who was or was not to blame. I was in a bad place. No going back or around, only going through with no guarantee of what was on the other side or that I would even make it to the other side. My prayer became this: I hurt. I know that you know that. If I make it through this, please make me the person you want me to be. That was essentially my only prayer for the next 2 years. It was realizing and acknowledging that I had reached my bottom. I could not go any deeper and remain alive. Acceptance was something that I had to do by myself. It was a place of self-realization of who I was and where I was. No one else could do it for me. In the past 3 years, I have communicated with many others going through the same type of withdrawal that I have survived. My purpose has been simply to give them hope. Before that is possible, they have to come to the place of acceptance of their circumstances and the realization that it is what it is, and that they must simply walk the path before them, no matter how painful. If they don't do that, my promise to walk beside them and hold their hand means nothing. Sadly, in benzodiazepine withdrawal, if one does not or cannot make it to the place of acceptance, they don't make it to the end of the journey alive. The third truth for me has been that, at all costs, hope must be kept alive. Hope is something that requires the input of others. This is especially true of benzodiazepine withdrawal. More often than not, those who have never been through withdrawal tend to suck the hope from those going through withdrawal. It is not done purposely, but that is how it feels to those in withdrawal. Of course, there are significant others who do understand the suffering of withdrawal. I have met some of them. They are amazing individuals with big hearts. Hope abounds for every person going through withdrawal. The problem for me was that I could not feel the hope, even though it was always there. I needed others to point it out to me over and over and over. I needed to hear it constantly. I endlessly searched for hope and found bits and pieces in many different places. There was always someone else in those places, either literally or in the form of something another person wrote. I even used things others had written as markers of future hope. In my first year of withdrawal, I took hopeful messages printed on Dove chocolate wrappers and placed the actual wrapper in a book or somewhere I would see in the future. They served as some kind of psychological tool. I would imagine myself healed one day and finding the wrappers. I have found quite a few since I have been well. The one I recall the most easily is, quote, "You are exactly where you are supposed to be," end quote. It didn't feel like it at the time, but it was obviously true. It always makes me smile when I find one of those markers. On this side of withdrawal and its suffering, life is amazing, more amazing than it has ever been. For me, the struggle was worth what I now have. Getting here was, as they say in AA, simple but not easy. It is very simple to understand that feelings are often deceptive and are not a true measure of reality. The necessity of acceptance of circumstances and maintaining hope throughout those circumstances is also a very simple concept, but it's often not easy to ignore bad feelings or to accept seemingly dire circumstances and maintain hope while surviving those circumstances. It is doable, though. It is very doable. It cannot be done by exerting one's will or trying to take a mind over matter approach without the input of others. We do not live in a vacuum. We need each other, all the more true when we are in withdrawal of any kind, or any kind of difficulty, really. We are here to reach out to each other, sometimes as the giver and sometimes as the receiver. In doing so, we become both giver and receiver. Perhaps that is the greatest overarching truth I have learned in all of this. Okay, that's it. Okay, only 11 minutes. That's pretty good. Let me go over this a little bit. It's pretty understandable just from the words. Let me go back to the top here. The three basic things I'm writing about here are getting through, what got me through. The first is feelings, and this is very, very hard. And I talked to my therapist about this. I remember her telling me over and over, fake it till you make it. Okay. Some people are really good at that. I mean, that's an AA saying. Or an NA saying too, both. Fake it till you make it. No matter how you feel, keep faking it, acting like you feel okay, like you're good. I was not good at that. There were times at the beginning I tried really hard to do that. I could do it, but it got to the point where I really didn't care anymore. I didn't care if people knew I felt like garbage. It didn't. In fact, I would tell them. I wanted to tell them. I wanted to reach out to them and like, this is how I feel. Can you help me? It was kind of like that. I did go to church in different places at times in my withdrawal, and there are people who didn't know, like they could not see in me like that there was something wrong, that I wasn't acting normally. But there are people who are very good at faking it and getting by, and like people see them and think they're okay. I wasn't good at that. I got to a point where I thought, nah, I'm not even going to try to fake it. I'm not going to lie to people. I'm just going to let them know. I mean, there's good about that and there's bad about that. The good about that is if they know you hurt, they can maybe in some fashion support you. For me, the bad was the more I did that after the first few months, the more I brought everyone else down. I brought everyone else down, and like they would quit asking me how I felt. They would kind of like stay away from me because I was depressing them. So there's both good and bad in that, but it's hard. You got to try to accept the feelings, because the feelings are not the reality. They really are not. But it's the feelings in withdrawal. I know, like the mental stuff is just, the depression and the fear, and especially the fear is just irrational. It's just, you're just afraid for no reason at all. So that was like the first truth I learned was feelings are not reality. Sometimes if you're dealing with a normal central nervous system, I think, they can represent reality to some degree, but in withdrawal, you cannot trust the feelings, but it's hard to ignore them, I know. Okay, the second truth for me was acceptance. You have to accept that this happened to you, that you're in a really hard place, between a rock and a hard place. You can't keep blaming yourself, blaming others. You just can't do it, because you have to, it is what it is. I'm in this place. I don't like it in this place, even though you can't really see the future and how it can possibly have anything good in it. And your thoughts are so distorted about your past that you think nothing good happened back there either. and you can't stand where you are, you still have to accept, I'm in this place. I have to do what is necessary to get out of this place. And that, unfortunately, when you're in withdrawal, that means letting time pass, surviving, getting through each and every moment of each day. That's very, very hard. It takes a monumental effort, even though it is not, you can't exert effort and get through any faster, but it takes a lot of effort just to endure the pain. The endurance is, I mean, I know a lot of people going through withdrawal and who have been through withdrawal that when you come out of it, like the endurance is, you have great endurance, especially emotionally and mentally, because you've come through something that required every fraction of an ounce of endurance. Okay, and the third truth was, and I talk about this all the time, and it's why I'm here, hope. You have to keep hope alive, and I've talked about this many, many times, and that for me was the success stories, but it was almost entirely success stories for me. But I read lots of emails, get lots of messages, talk to people. Hope is the biggie. It's like you got to keep reaching out anywhere you can for hope. And it mostly has to come from people who have been through it, or in the form of validation with other people who are going through it with you. So that's maybe acceptance and hope. They're both very, very important. I've known people who struggled with accepting to the point where they couldn't. They just could not accept that they were in this place. One person in particular, I recall, she could not accept that she had done this to herself. She kept blaming herself. And she had been off a while, and she just couldn't handle it. She could not handle it. And she's not here anymore. She would talk with, at the time, there was another young lady, married young lady, living about 20 minutes from here, who has since moved. They were very, very good friends. And that young lady also was in withdrawal. And we both would talk to her a good bit on the phone, like back, that was a number of years ago now. And she just could not handle that she did this to herself, and that the doctors would do this. And she didn't have the acceptance part, but she also, as I talked in one of the videos on for caregivers, she had, and her family, she was being given an ultimatum, like, if you're not better by such and such time, we're going to start talking divorce and all that. So she had a number of things going on. Maybe if it had not been for the ultimatums, maybe she could have accepted it a little more if she had a husband who was a little more accepting of the situation. It's going to take as long as it takes. I think a lot of times we can get the acceptance from someone else. Like maybe we ourselves, while we're sick, are having a hard time accepting this. If we have someone, like a husband or wife or whoever, helping us to accept it, telling us, well, you didn't do this to yourself. Don't blame yourself. It doesn't matter who did this. Don't, like your psychiatrist, your doctor, yeah, there's plenty of blame there, but you can't just, accept you're in this place. I'm going to help you through this. And I think we can get our acceptance in that way from people maybe who don't actually understand what it's like to be in withdrawal, but they can help us to take on the attitude, it is what it is, I got to do what I got to do. So the acceptance is very, very, very important. And along with that, the hope. And if you can't accept where you are, it's hard to have any hope. It really, really is. I remember, like, my point of acceptance really was, it was that morning when I had read about benzo withdrawal and how it can take forever and you got to be really careful coming off, and I had no idea how to do it. And I could not, the place I was in at the time, I was so emotional, in so much emotional agony, that I couldn't, it was hard for me to accept, and I just freaked out and I nearly took my life. But once I called Jane, the lady that I called, I began to have like a little bit of like hope, like maybe there is some hope, and I could accept, okay, I'm in this bad place, but I think there actually might be a way out of this. And then I went to the psych hospital and all that, and the whole story. But that was kind of my point, like, of acceptance. It's like, okay, this can be, I can get through this. This can be conquered, kind of like passively conquered, but I can get through this. I can survive this. And that was kind of like my initial point of acceptance, because I really struggled. I was struggling that morning. But anyway, so that's what I have here, that getting through. Yeah. That, I sort of remember writing that, but not, I kind of remember writing that. I don't know if that's, I don't think I posted it on this website. There's nothing here that's given that title, and I don't think I changed the title of it and had the same little story. I'm not sure, but anyway, that's what I have. I hope it speaks to you in some way and helps you. I have lots of other writings. I'm gonna have to look around, and haven't received too many emails with questions since the last video. I've gotten a number of emails with comments and some people struggling, but not. I'll look at my writings and look at some more of the things, and maybe go through some of the writings that are already on the website. I don't know. So anyway, gonna get ready here, go downstairs, get a little something to eat, some ice cream, watch the rest of the Masters, and that'll be good. It's always good to watch the end of the Masters. That's probably my favorite golf championship of the whole 9 yards. I do like the British Open too, though, because the links over there are very strange, very different from the ones in the United States. So anyway, I'll let you go here now. I'll be back tomorrow probably. Can't promise anything, but that's my plan, to come back tomorrow. So as always, I'm right here, and I will be right here. Bye-bye.